Welcome to the Tiffany Micah podcast. What we do here is build the strength and courage in you to accomplish your big dreams and goals in your sport. No longer will you feel limited. You won't feel you're not good enough. You won't question whether you will make it, and those doubts will disappear because you will have the competitive edge over your opponents and you'll leave them in your wake. And the bonus is, others will notice. So listen up and take notes because I'll show you exactly how to do it. Hey there, this is Tiff from the Tiffany Micah podcast and welcome to today's episode. I have to talk to you about this Anti-Bloodline Code, no courage, today because I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying here. And I'm not saying that you don't work hard or you don't work hard enough because I'm sure you do. But this is really focusing on the athlete or the sports person who wants to have their success in their sport, but they're actually not doing what it will take to get to that success. And it's tough putting yourself out there on the line. You know, it's tough being out there in that arena because you know what it does? When you actually are out there competing, what it actually does is it brings up and exposes your vulnerabilities. And the thing is when we feel vulnerable, we feel as though we're weak. And we feel weak, and rather, when we feel weak, it makes us feel not strong enough and not worthy or not good enough that we should be out here slogging it out every day, working our guts out, training as hard as we can. Right, that's what happens when we feel vulnerable. At times we feel like we're just feeling weak. We're not strong enough mentally. We're feeling weak. We don't feel like we deserve it. Yet we're still out there slogging it out. Right, we're training our guts out. But what I want to do here is I want to clarify what no courage actually means in this context. And so what I've classified that with no courage is that you have no courage. You're not tenacious and you don't persevere. You give up when it gets too hard. You have no guts, no desire to push through the barriers, and you complain that it's too hard. You hate feeling uncomfortable and won't take the risks. You want to stay in a safe place where there is no threat. So that's that thing where you're feeling under pressure. You don't want to feel that pressure, and you're too scared to do anything because you're afraid of what might happen. That is, won't be good enough. So what are the main points here? What am I really talking about? Well, one is that when it gets tough, you give up. Two is that you actually stop when you actually run into a barrier, like it just gets too hard. Three, you hate that feeling of feeling weak and your vulnerabilities actually get exposed. Four, you actually prefer comfort. You prefer where you're safe and comfortable. And five, you are scared that you just won't be good enough. Why do I say that? Why do I share this no courage anti-bloodline code with you today? Well, you know what? That was me. So when I was pursuing my professional tennis career, I was 18, 19 and 20 pursuing that. And I'll tell you, I worked damn hard. And if you've heard me talk about this before, I trained my guts out, worked really, really hard. But when I encountered obstacles, I really struggled to work through them. And there was a lot of obstacles coming my way because I had done very well in the junior tennis element, but then I really struggled when I was working on turning professional. That's when the big struggles really started to happen for me. And a lot of the time was that I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't think I was a good enough player as the other players that I saw. I felt like I was really weak. And I'm not talking about weak in the sense of the strength, the physical strength. I'm talking about feeling weak in the mental area. feeling like I was a loser because I started to lose a lot of matches. And when I came up against a really tough opponent, I actually really freaked out and all my weaknesses became exposed. So not only the weaknesses in the sense of my mental or lack of mental strength, my lack of courage to believe in me, but also some of the skills that I didn't feel that were taken care of, that they were still weak. There were certain areas in my skills and gameplay that I felt was weak, and I really struggled to fight back, and I couldn't fight back. And a lot of the time when I couldn't fight back was that I was actually so caught up in my own head. I kept telling myself I was a loser. I kept telling myself I was not good enough. I was like, Tiff, you're wasting your time. You'll never be good enough. Just like those people keep telling you. Because I had people around me that kept telling me that I was never going to make it. Right? It wasn't my parents. My parents believed in me 100%, especially my mum. Everything. She believed in me. She really believed in me. So much to the point that she actually was going to mortgage her house. I didn't know it at the time, but she looked at actually how she was going to mortgage a house because she believed in me so much. She felt that I had the ability, I had the potential to really become the tennis player I want to become. That is pure belief, right? It's awesome. But I had so many people around me telling me that I was never going to make it. I never acknowledged that I actually had the courage to step out onto the court, even though I was at times absolutely humiliated in matches, and I never acknowledged that I had 1 ounce of courage. And you know what my biggest fear was? My biggest fear that I was absolutely terrified I was never going to be good enough. I was never going to achieve my tennis dream, and I'm talking about my ultimate tennis dream. My ultimate tennis dream was to become #1 tennis player in the world, pursuing the life that I really wanted to do, play tennis all around the world, getting sponsorships, getting endorsements, really being the ultimate tennis player. And why did I feel that way? Because I didn't have any belief in me. I didn't have any confidence in me. Because I listened to those people in my life who told me that I would never make it. And they were adults telling me this. You would think, too, that adults would be actually encouraging you, wouldn't you? And these particular adults that kept saying this to me, I respected the adults because they were older than me. I was just a kid. And I thought, well, they must know. So this is when I started to develop doubts. I started to believe the doubts. So I lost any ounce of courage that I had. And then you know what happened? I gave up on me. And you know what happened after that? I gave up on my dream. And I look back now and I say to them, how dare they put their limitations on me? It was absolutely disgusting to do that to a young person. And I want to say this to you, don't let anyone put their limitations on you, ever. Never let anyone put their limitations on you, okay? It's really important that you get this because I want you to achieve your dream. I want you to achieve your sports dream. I want you to have the courage to go for it, okay? So now the question you may have for me, though, is like, okay, Tiff, great. Thanks for sharing that. But how do I develop the courage if I don't have courage in me, right? So what we want to do here is we want to develop a bravery strategy. That's what I call it, a bravery strategy. And I actually spoke about the bravery strategy in the Bloodline Code called Unshakable Grit. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to add on to this episode is I'm going to add on to the Bloodline Unshakable Grit that I recorded for you previously. And in that episode has what I call the bravery strategy. So what I want you to do right now is do not turn this off. Continue to listen. You may have heard the Unshakable Grit Bloodline Code before, but I want you to listen to it again, and then I want you to be developing your bravery strategy. Because once you have planned out your bravery strategy, you know what I want you to do with it is one is put it into action, but the other thing that I want you to do is I want you to share it with me, okay? I want to hear and see what your bravery strategy is. So I want you to send it to me to Tiff, Tiff, at tiffany-mika, mika.com. I'd love to see it. Okay, so don't go anywhere. Keep listening to this ongoing episode of Unshakable Grit, and I want you to dream big, believe in you, and go after your dreams. Yes, guess what? Another bloodline code. We've got a few more of these to go, but I can't tell you how important these are, because this is going to be part of who you become, what you need to do in order for you to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. So, I'm putting these bloodline codes together for you so that you can become the athlete that you want to become. You can become the person that you want to become, right? The champion that you want to become. So, unshakable grit is what we're going to be focusing on today. So what does unshakable grit mean to you? So what this means is that you are courageous and will do what it takes no matter how tough it is. You're tenacious and you persevere with guts. You're mentally tough to push through the barriers. You're not afraid to feel uncomfortable because you know that it will build you to be a fierce contender. You're unafraid to be fearless and you go all out, right? You give it your all. You're brave and you're not scared to be exposed, and you're willing to step into the arena and have all your vulnerabilities exposed. That's what it really means. So what are the main points here really in having unshakable grit? Well, you are courageous. Okay, that's a really good point. That's number one. Number two, you'll do what it takes no matter what. Number three, you have perseverance, right? You just stick it out no matter what. Number four, you are mentally tough. Number five, you're not afraid to feel uncomfortable, because this is what's going to happen if you want to become the person you want to become, the champion you want to become. You have to be not afraid to feel uncomfortable. And number six, willing to step into the arena. And this is about exposing the vulnerabilities that you have or the weaknesses that you have. You are brave because you're still going out there no matter what. And this is what we want in this bloodline code. We want to have that unshakable grit. We want to be brave. Okay, we want to be comfortable and not afraid to get uncomfortable. Right, we want to be able to bear exposing our vulnerabilities. Right, we want to be able to do that. We want to be brave enough to do that. But what if you don't feel brave? Or what if you don't feel, or you're afraid to feel uncomfortable? And what if you're afraid to expose your vulnerabilities? To be 100% honest with you, you know what they say in NASA? Houston, we have a problem. All the bloodline codes that I've shared with you are equally important, and this must be part of what we do. Must be part of what we do. So if you're feeling not brave, if you're feeling uncomfortable, and if you're frightened of having the vulnerabilities of what you do exposed, then yeah, Houston, we do have a problem. So the question is then you go, okay, Tiff, all right, you're telling me this, but how do we develop into feeling brave? How do we develop and feel comfortable with feeling uncomfortable? And how do we have those vulnerabilities exposed, but feeling comfortable to have them exposed, right? Because it's what's going to happen. And really, the things that we have to look at here is we have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. And you know what? If you don't push yourself out of your comfort zone, then you're not going to improve. That is what the problem will be, because people get so comfortable in their comfort zone, then that's what happens, isn't it? They get so comfortable, nothing happens. They get so comfortable, they lose that bravery. They lose that feeling of not feeling right, right? They just want to stay in their little zone and feel comfortable. They become fearful of having their vulnerabilities exposed. So if we don't push ourselves out of our comfort zone, we don't improve. So we need to develop this unshakable grit. You remember the Bloodline Code, and I talked about embracing failure as feedback. Do you remember that? If you haven't actually listened to that Bloodline Code, it's so important that you listen to that one. Embrace failure as feedback. Do you remember what the codes for embracing feedback or for embracing failure as feedback were? Well, I'm going to remind you, it's when you lose, it is not a failure. It is the result of your current performance. But you ruthlessly decipher where you failed. You distinguish between your current reality and your ultimate performance. And you plot your strategy to advance you forward, never choking on future performances. Right? We're embracing the failure. So if we have those vulnerabilities, we want to embrace it. We embrace it as feedback. We embrace on how we can move forward. Right? So the main points really for embracing failure as feedback is 1, the result of your current performance. 2, decipher what didn't work. 3, where you are now compared to where you want to be. And 4, you plot your strategy. That's all part of it, isn't it? And if we don't have unshakable grit right now, does it mean that we can never develop it? Absolutely not. Of course we can develop it. But how do we develop unshakable grit when we don't feel brave? How do we develop unshakable grit when we feel so uncomfortable and we don't like that feeling? How do we develop unshakable grit when our vulnerabilities are exposed and we don't like that? How do we do that? Well, we're going to craft together a simple strategy, okay? And I just call it developing bravery. We're being courageous, okay? So this is what you're going to do here. It's a very, very simple thing to do. We've got two points that we're going to work on. So number 1 in our developing of bravery is 1, I want you to actually write out what makes you feel uncomfortable and what scares you in your sport. I want you to write it all down, okay? We're just going to be talking about your sport, okay? Because whatever comes up in your sport's going to come up in your life anyway. So I want you to list everything that scares you in your sport. So it could be the fear of losing, or you're fearful of making mistakes, or you don't like people watching you play, or you don't like certain opponents you play against scare you, or certain teams. You're worried about what other people think of you, worried about what your coach thinks of you, worried about what your parents think of you. List everything that scares you. Okay, we've got to get that out of your head. So that's the first part. The second part, what we're going to do here is we're going to develop what we call your alter ego. And it's actually developing you into the person who you want to be. So you may have a role model of someone that you want to be like. You can make a list of what you see that they do that you really admire and you'd like to be like. Or it could be the opposite of what you've just written down about what scares you, but it's creating that, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples. So with your alter ego, so make your opponents tremble. You're excited about competition because you are highly focused and tuned in. You love people watching you play. It brings out your determination to succeed. You love training hard and giving everything you've got. You love sweat pouring off your body because you feel energized, never fatigued. You play with purpose because you deserve to be here. You play with courage. You play to set the example of excellence. Right? So you can keep listing out all these traits, all these feelings, everything that you want to have that's going to be part of your alter ego, right? You dominate your forehand, and no one has a forehand like you in the game. Whatever it is, right? So you list it all out. And then what we want to do is we want to give that alter ego a name. You want to call yourself something, right? So for me, I actually have one. I've got the Tiffinator, like the Terminator. I actually got given that name by a lady I used to teach a few years ago in a particular group coaching situation where I'd give them a clinic and they'd always go and play holes. And what would happen is I have this effect on people because they want to show me how good they're playing and how everything's coming together and what we've worked on. They get quite nervous when I appear. And sometimes they actually perform a lot better when I'm not there. So when I'm watching them, they get quite frustrated by wanting to show me how much they've improved. I know they've improved. I've seen it, but they actually want to show me in that moment. So what happened was this one particular time I showed up and I was watching this lady play, lovely lady, Kerry, if she ever listens. Hi, Kerry. And she said, just popped out, oh, the Tiffinator's here. I love it. I love being called the Tiffinator, and it's not really to put people off. It's just like I step into this power, right? I'm this courageous, brave person. I'm like Superman, right? I'm invincible. I've got this armor. I'm incredible. I love that feeling, right? So when I step into that alter ego, the Tiffinator, watch out, okay? So that's what we want to be able to do for you. We want to create this alter ego for you. So once you've listed out the person that you want to be, give it a name. But you can't use the Tiffinator, I'm sorry. No, you can if you want to, that's fine. If your name's Tiff, no problem. So now it's your turn. I want you to make sure that what you're doing is creating this alter ego, and then you want to craft it. You've got to craft that strategy, okay? So we'll just go quickly over it again. So one is what we're actually doing is we're developing bravery so that you can be courageous and have that unshakable grit. So the first part of that is you have to list everything that scares you, okay? Just get it out of your head. Absolutely everything that scares you, make a list. And then the second part to that is creating your alter ego, developing the person that you want to be, and then you make a whole list. And then that's what you focus on, and then that's what you give it a name, because that's who you are going to become, okay? So that's what we're going to do today for developing unshakable grit. So before you go, I've just put together a great PDF for you, the number 1 deadly mistakes athletes make. If you have not yet seen that and you'd like a copy of that, just make sure you go over to www.tiffany-mika.com. It's on the homepage there. You can't miss it. You can download your copy of the number 1 deadly mistake that athletes make. And I look forward to seeing how you can then not be that, right? I don't want you to make that same mistake that deadly mistake that athletes do make, and that's why they don't achieve their goals in their life. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Love it if you could share with me what you like best about what you heard today. If you've got friends that you know that would benefit from these episodes, I'd really appreciate too if you could share these episodes with your friends, because we want to build the Reach Your Potential with Tiff community as big as we possibly can. If you've got 30 seconds to spare, I'd also really appreciate a 5-star review wherever you hear this episode. So I want you to dream big, believe in you, go after your dreams, have an awesome day, take care, talk soon. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you haven't yet downloaded the number 1 deadly mistake athletes make sure you go to tiffany-mika.com and download the number 1 deadly mistake athletes make, because I don't want you to make that mistake. If you can also share with me what you like best about what you heard, where you hear this episode, in the comments section. If you can also share with your friends that you know that would benefit from these episodes, and please leave a 5-star review where you hear these episodes, because I would really appreciate it. Dream big, believe in you, and go after your dreams. Have an awesome day.